Angela Moore was not just another woman walking into a gas station that afternoon. She was the CEO of a successful company that owned a chain of gas stations across the state. But she did not come in wearing a suit, carrying a briefcase, or stepping out of a shiny luxury car. Instead, she wore a simple hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Her hair was tied back in a bun, and she drove an old sedan that she liked to use when she wanted to stay unnoticed. She had learned from experience that sometimes the only way to know the truth about how her businesses were really run was to step into them looking like an ordinary customer. Angela believed that true leadership meant staying close to the ground, close to the people who kept the wheels of her company turning: cashiers, attendants, managers, and customers. While her office had screens and reports to show her the numbers, those numbers never told her about kindness, respect, or the simple act of making someone feel welcome. That day, she decided to stop by one of her stations unannounced, without calling ahead or sending her assistant. She wanted to see how the staff behaved when they thought no one was watching. The gas station looked busy. A few cars were lined up at the pumps, and inside the small shop, a couple of customers were browsing snacks and drinks. Angela stepped inside and walked up to the counter. The man behind it was tall, with a stiff expression. He was the manager of the station, but of course, he had no idea who Angela was. She placed a few items on the counter, a bottle of water and some chips, and waited. The manager glanced at her but did not greet her. Instead, he frowned slightly, as if she was wasting his time. Angela stayed quiet, observing. She had dealt with many kinds of people in her career, from investors to employees, and she knew the difference between someone having a bad day and someone showing their true character. This man's look was not tired, it was dismissive, almost as though he believed she did not belong there. Angela cleared her throat softly and asked, "Can you ring these up, please?" The manager leaned back and crossed his arms. "Are you even planning to pay with cash or card? Because we don't have time for nonsense here." His tone was sharp, his voice loud enough for the other customers to hear. A woman who was standing nearby raised her eyebrows and looked from him to Angela, waiting to see how she would respond. Angela felt the sting of his words but remained calm. "Of course, I'm paying," she said. She reached for her wallet slowly, her movements measured. She wanted to see just how far this man was willing to go. Instead of taking her items and scanning them, the manager sighed dramatically. "Look," he said, "we don't need people hanging around if they can't afford stuff. You should go to another store." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Angela could feel the heat rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay composed. It wasn't the first time in her life that someone had judged her by how she looked, but she never expected it to happen inside her own business. She remembered the early years when she herself worked behind a counter, smiling at every customer, no matter who they were, because she knew what it felt like to be ignored. A young man at the back of the line whispered to his friend, "That was rude." Another customer shook her head in disapproval, but no one spoke loudly. They all just watched. Angela looked at the manager again, studying him carefully. His posture, his tone, his expression, all of it told her this wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was how he truly saw her, unworthy of his respect. Angela could have shouted back, but instead she asked softly, "Is this how you treat all customers?" The manager smirked, clearly not realizing who he was talking to. "Only the ones who waste my time," he replied. "Now, if you're not going to buy, please step aside. Others are waiting." Angela placed her wallet on the counter, right in front of him, but she didn't say another word. Instead, she stood quietly for a moment, her eyes steady on his. She had learned in boardrooms and negotiations that silence could be more powerful than any speech. The manager grew uncomfortable under her gaze and finally pushed her items back toward her. "I said, go somewhere else," he repeated. Angela picked up the bottle of water and the chips without paying, but not in anger. She placed them gently back on the shelf where she had found them. Then she walked out of the store calmly, her footsteps slow and deliberate. From the outside, it might have looked like she had been humiliated, but inside, her mind was already racing. She sat in her car for a moment, her hands resting on the steering wheel. The memories of her journey flashed through her mind, the long nights she spent planning her first business, the loans she fought to secure, the investors who doubted her, and the pride she felt the day she opened her first gas station. She had built everything from the ground up, brick by brick, only to be told by one of her own managers that she did not belong in her own store. Angela took a deep breath. She could have driven away, shaken off the experience, and continued her day. But she knew she couldn't. If this was how he treated her, the owner, how many other customers had been insulted, ignored, or turned away? How many people had left the store feeling small, simply because one man thought he was above them? The thought made her heart heavy. She reached for her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found her assistant's number. With a steady voice, she asked for the staff details of this station. As she waited for the reply, she looked around at the building, the pumps, the bright sign carrying the company's name, her pride, her reputation. Everything that stood there was built on her values of respect and hard work. She couldn't let one person tear that down in a matter of minutes. Angela put her phone down and stared out of the windshield, lost in thought. She thought about the people who believed in her, her employees who worked tirelessly, and her customers who chose her stations over countless others. They deserved better. They deserved to feel valued. Inside the station, the manager went about his business, not realizing that the woman he had just dismissed was watching, waiting, and preparing to change the course of his day and perhaps his entire career in just a matter of minutes. Angela sat quietly in her car, but her mind was far from still. She could still hear the manager's sharp words echoing in her ears. The way he had dismissed her, as though she was not worthy of service, cut deeper than she wanted to admit. She had faced prejudice before, but it never became easier, no matter how many times it happened. She reminded herself that she was not the same struggling woman she once was. She was the CEO of this company. Yet even now, dressed casually, she was being judged by her skin color and appearance. Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. It was a quick background report on the staff at the station. Sure enough, the man inside was listed as the station manager, someone who had been employed for less than a year. Angela sighed softly. He was new, which might explain his arrogance. Sometimes new managers believed their title gave them power over people, instead of remembering that leadership was about service. She thought about how many times she had trained people to treat customers with kindness, yet here was a man who had already broken the values she had built her company on. Angela leaned back in her seat and looked through the glass window into the store. The manager was helping another customer now, but his tone was still stiff, his body language still unkind. She could see the way he rushed the woman at the counter, barely making eye contact, as if she was just another burden in his day. Angela noticed how uncomfortable the customer looked, paying quickly and leaving without a smile. That sight confirmed what she feared: this man wasn't just rude to her, this was how he treated everyone. Angela thought back to the early days of her career, when she herself worked behind a counter at a small store. She remembered how hard those days were, how her feet ached after long shifts, but also how much pride she took in treating every single customer with respect. Some customers would smile at her, thank her, and leave her day brighter. Others would walk in with anger or impatience, but Angela never let it change the way she treated them. She believed kindness was free, and respect cost nothing. That belief was what helped her climb from employee to entrepreneur, and then to CEO. Now, sitting in her car outside her own station, she wondered how a man like this had slipped through the hiring process. She trusted her HR team, but she also knew no system was perfect. This was why she made surprise visits. Reports and interviews could only tell her so much. the truth was found in moments like these, unguarded and real. As she watched, Angela noticed the other employees in the store. A young cashier stood at the second register, serving customers quickly and with a polite smile. Her body language was different. She leaned forward, greeted people, and handed them receipts with a quiet thank you. Angela felt a small warmth in her chest. Not everyone in her company had forgotten the values she built it on. But it was clear the manager's attitude overshadowed the efforts of others. A leader set the tone, and his tone was toxic. Angela tapped her fingers lightly on the steering wheel. She thought about her options. She could storm back in right now, reveal who she was, and embarrass him in front of everyone. But Angela was not someone who acted in anger. She had learned to weigh her actions carefully. She wanted to send a message not only to him but also to her other employees. She wanted them to understand that her company was not built on fear or arrogance, but on fairness and respect. 7 minutes had passed since she left the store. In those minutes, her decision had grown stronger. She thought about the customers who had been watching earlier. What impression had they taken with them? Did they walk out thinking that her stations were unfriendly, that they didn't welcome people who looked different? That thought troubled her deeply. She had spent years building a brand that customers could trust. She could not allow one man's prejudice to undo that work. Angela thought about her journey once more, the obstacles she faced when she first started her business. There were people who told her she wouldn't succeed, that a woman, especially a black woman, couldn't run a company in such a competitive industry. She remembered the banks that turned her down for loans, the investors who ignored her, and the suppliers who doubted her. She had pushed through all of that, proving them wrong, one step at a time. She had built her stations with the hope that anyone, no matter their background, would feel welcome. And now, here she was, watching one of her own managers break that promise. Inside, the manager seemed at ease, completely unaware of who had just walked out. He leaned against the counter between customers, scrolling on his phone, not even pretending to care about the people walking in and out. Angela watched in silence, her eyes steady, her heart calm but firm. She knew exactly what she needed to do. As she sat in her car, she remembered a saying her grandmother once told her: "Respect is the true currency. If you spend it freely, it always comes back to you." That saying had guided her through life, reminding her that even in moments of struggle, giving respect was a form of strength. She thought about how the manager had chosen the opposite path, hoarding arrogance, spending cruelty, and expecting loyalty in return. It wouldn't last. It never did. Angela's phone buzzed again. This time it was her assistant calling, asking if everything was all right since Angela had checked in unexpectedly. Angela assured her she was fine, but her voice carried a quiet determination. She asked her assistant to stay on standby, ready to contact HR as soon as she gave the word. The assistant, sensing the seriousness, agreed without hesitation. Angela took another slow breath. She didn't want to rush. She wanted to be sure that when she walked back inside, she carried not just her authority, but her message. She wanted the staff and customers present to witness that kindness and fairness mattered more than titles or uniforms. She wanted them to see that leadership was about accountability, and that no one, no matter their position, was above the values of the company. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard. It had been exactly 7 minutes since she first walked out. 7 minutes that gave her time to think, to reflect, and to prepare. Now, her decision was final. She reached for the door handle, her face calm, her mind steady. The next steps she took would not only change the future of the manager inside but also remind everyone watching that respect was not optional in her company, it was the foundation of it. Angela opened the door and stepped out of her car. Her footsteps were firm but unhurried as she made her way back toward the station. Customers passed her, some leaving with bags, some entering, but she barely noticed. Her focus was sharp. She walked with quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to shout to be felt. As she reached the door, she caught her reflection in the glass. She still looked like an ordinary woman in a hoodie and jeans, but this time, she wasn't going in as a silent observer. She was going in as the CEO, ready to reveal the truth. Angela pushed the glass door open and stepped back into the gas station. The little bell above the entrance chimed softly, announcing her return. For a moment, no one paid much attention. The cashier kept helping a customer, and a couple of people browsed the shelves. The manager, however, glanced up and frowned when he saw her again. His expression carried the same arrogance as before, as if her presence was a bother. Angela walked slowly toward the counter, her calm steps filled with quiet authority. She didn't rush, and she didn't need to. Every second was deliberate, every breath steady. She knew that this was the moment where things would change, not only for the manager but for everyone watching. The manager crossed his arms, leaning back slightly as she approached. "You again," he muttered, his voice laced with irritation. "Didn't I tell you to go somewhere else?" Angela looked at him directly, her eyes sharp but her tone steady. "Yes, you did," she said softly. "And I left. But I think you and I need to have another conversation." The man scoffed. "Conversation? Lady, I'm busy running this place. I don't have time for whatever you're trying to pull." A couple of customers turned their heads now, curious about the tension. The cashier glanced nervously at the two, sensing something unusual. The air in the room began to shift, as if everyone could feel that something important was about to happen. Angela placed her hands gently on the counter, her voice calm but carrying weight. "Do you know who owns this gas station?" she asked. The manager chuckled, clearly not taking her seriously. "I don't know, some big company." "Why do you care? You're just a customer. Now if you're not buying anything, step aside." Angela tilted her head slightly, her gaze never leaving his. "That's right," she said. "It is owned by a company. But do you know who the CEO of that company is?" The man rolled his eyes. "How should I know? What does it matter to me?" At that moment, Angela straightened her posture, her calm demeanor unchanged but her words firm. "It matters because you're speaking to her right now," she said. "I am Angela Moore. I am the CEO. And this is my company, my station, my name on that sign outside." The words hit the air like thunder. For a second, silence filled the store. The manager's smirk froze on his face. His eyes widened, and his posture shifted uneasily. He stuttered, his voice suddenly losing its confidence. Wait, what? You're the CEO?" Angela nodded slowly. "Yes. And I came here today, not in a suit, not in a fancy car, but just as a regular customer. I wanted to see how my stations are being run. I wanted to see how my customers are treated. And now I know." The customers nearby exchanged glances, some whispering in surprise. The cashier's mouth fell open slightly, her eyes wide with shock. It was as though a mask had been torn away, revealing the truth hidden underneath. The manager's face turned pale. He stumbled over his words, trying to recover. I didn't know. I mean, I thought," his voice trailed off, filled with panic. Angela's voice remained even, steady, and powerful. "You thought I didn't belong here. You thought I wasn't worth your respect. But let me tell you something, every customer who walks through that door belongs here. Every person who chooses to spend their money at my stations deserves respect, no matter what they look like, no matter how they dress, no matter who they are. That is what I built this company on. And you failed to honor that." The manager opened his mouth again, but no words came. He looked around desperately, as though hoping someone would come to his defense. But the silence of the store spoke louder than any words. Everyone had seen what happened. Everyone knew the truth. Angela pulled out her phone and dialed a number with calm precision. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. She simply called her HR department, identified herself, and explained what had just happened. "Terminate his employment immediately," she said clearly. "I will follow up with written details, but his behavior today does not align with our values. I will not allow disrespect toward customers in my company." The manager's face drained of all color. He reached out his hand slightly, as though to stop her. "Please, wait. I didn't mean it like that. I was just—" Angela raised her hand, silencing him. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice remained calm. "It's too late for excuses. Respect is not something you give only when you feel like it. It is not something you save for certain people. It is something you owe to every person who walks in. And you chose arrogance instead." The customers, who had been silent until now, began nodding. One of them whispered, "Good for her." Another customer softly clapped, and soon a few others joined in. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it carried meaning. Angela turned to the cashier, who was still in shock. Her expression softened slightly. "You're doing a good job," she said gently. "Keep treating people with kindness. That's how we grow." The young woman nodded quickly, her face filled with relief and pride. Angela then looked around at the customers. "I want you all to know," she said, raising her voice just enough for everyone to hear, "that this company belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. You keep us alive. You are the reason we are here. And I promise you, no one will ever be made to feel unwelcome in my stations again." The atmosphere in the room changed completely. What had started as a tense, uncomfortable moment now felt powerful and inspiring. Customers smiled, some even thanked her as she walked away. The cashier stood taller behind her register, encouraged by her words. The manager, however, stood frozen, realizing his mistake too late. He had treated the CEO herself as though she was less than worthy, and in doing so, revealed who he truly was. Angela walked toward the door, her steps steady. She had come in quietly, unnoticed, just another woman in jeans and a hoodie. But now, everyone in that room knew who she was, not just by her title, but by her actions. She had shown them that leadership wasn't about shouting, or showing off, or proving power. Leadership was about holding people accountable, about standing for values, about protecting dignity. As she pushed the door open again and stepped back into the sunlight, Angela felt a deep sense of calm. She hadn't raised her voice, she hadn't argued, she hadn't humiliated him with anger. She had simply revealed the truth and acted with clarity. That, she thought, was real power. She walked to her car slowly, her mind steady. She knew this wasn't just about one manager. It was about the culture of her company. She would make sure the lesson traveled far beyond this one station. She would remind every manager, every employee, that respect was not a suggestion, it was a rule. And as she sat in her car, she glanced once more at the station. Behind the glass, customers were still talking, the cashier was still smiling, and the manager was still standing frozen at the counter. Angela turned her key in the ignition and drove off, knowing the moment would stay with them all. This was not just a story about a rude manager. It was a story about values, about leadership, and about never forgetting where you came from. Angela knew her grandmother's words were still true, respect was the true currency. And today, she had spent it wisely. Angela drove away from the station, but her mind kept replaying the scene inside. She thought about the faces of the customers, the nervous cashier, and the stunned manager who realized too late who he had been speaking to. She knew the story would spread quickly, because people talked about moments like this. Someone would go home and tell their family, "You won't believe what I saw today. The woman they tried to disrespect turned out to be the CEO." Stories like that didn't stay quiet. And Angela wanted that. She wanted the message to travel further than just the walls of that one gas station. As she drove, she called her assistant again and gave clear instructions. I need an immediate staff meeting scheduled across all stations this week. Every manager, every supervisor must be present. We need to revisit our values, and I need them to hear directly from me. Her assistant quickly agreed, hearing the seriousness in her tone. Angela's thoughts drifted back to the manager she had just fired. Part of her felt sorry for him, not for losing the job, but for losing sight of what mattered most. He had chosen to let arrogance guide his actions, and now he would pay the price. But another part of her felt firm and unshaken. A leader who couldn't respect customers didn't deserve to lead in her company. The following morning, Angela visited another one of her stations, this time not in disguise but openly as the CEO. The staff greeted her warmly, some even smiling nervously when they saw her walk in. Word had already reached them about what happened at the other station. One cashier whispered to another, "That's her. She's the one who stood up yesterday." Angela pretended not to notice, but deep inside, she hoped those whispers would remind everyone that their actions mattered. Later that week, the big staff meeting was held in a rented hall large enough to fit all the managers and supervisors. Hundreds of chairs were arranged in neat rows, and on the stage stood a simple podium with her company's logo. Angela walked to the front, wearing a simple but professional outfit. She didn't want to intimidate her employees with grandeur, she wanted to connect with them. When she stepped to the microphone, the room grew quiet. Everyone waited for her to speak. Angela took a slow breath and began. "I built this company with one promise, that anyone who walks into our stations will be treated with respect. It doesn't matter what they look like, what they wear, or how much money they have. Respect is not optional, it is who we are. And when one person breaks that promise, they are not just disrespecting a customer. They are disrespecting all of us." The managers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing this was about more than just one station. Angela continued, her voice strong but calm. "Some of you may have heard what happened this week. A customer walked into one of our stations. She was treated poorly. She was told she didn't belong there. That customer was me." Gasps echoed through the hall. People exchanged surprised looks, some covering their mouths in shock. Angela nodded slowly. "Yes, I walked in like any ordinary customer. I wasn't in a suit. I wasn't driving a luxury car. I wanted to see how my customers are treated when no one knows the CEO is watching. And I saw something that broke my heart. A manager, the very person meant to set an example, chose arrogance and disrespect." She paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle in the room. "I fired him on the spot. Not because of me. I don't need anyone's approval or respect to know my worth. I fired him because if he could treat me that way, imagine how many customers he must have pushed away. Imagine how many people walked out of that station feeling unwelcome, simply because he didn't see their value." The room was silent, heavy with reflection. Angela softened her tone now, her voice warm but firm. "I want all of you to understand this, your job is not just to sell gas or snacks. Your job is to make people feel safe and respected when they step into our doors. Some of our customers are tired parents, some are travelers far from home, some are workers coming off long shifts. You may never know what someone is carrying in their heart when they walk in. But one kind word, one respectful gesture, can make all the difference." Applause began to ripple through the hall, slow at first, then stronger. Some managers even nodded with tears in their eyes, realizing how deeply her words reached them. Angela smiled faintly, grateful that her message was landing. After the speech, many employees lined up to shake her hand, thank her, or simply promise they would do better. Angela listened to each of them, encouraging them gently. She didn't want fear to be the reason they changed, she wanted pride to be the reason they grew. That evening, as she returned home, Angela sat in her living room reflecting on everything. She thought of her grandmother's lessons, the struggles of her early career, and the respect she had earned through years of hard work. She realized that leadership was not about perfection but about presence, being there to correct mistakes, guide people, and remind them of the bigger picture. A week later, Angela received a letter from a customer who had witnessed the incident at the first station. The letter read, "I was there when that manager spoke to you so harshly. I didn't know you were the CEO, but when you revealed it and stood your ground, I felt proud to be your customer. Thank you for showing us that respect matters." Angela read the letter twice, her heart warming. It confirmed what she already knew: people remembered how you made them feel. And she had chosen to make people feel valued. Angela decided to take further action. She introduced a new training program across all her stations, not just for managers but for every employee. The program focused on kindness, empathy, and customer care. She made sure that real-life scenarios were included, so staff could practice handling situations with patience and respect. She personally visited some of the training sessions, sharing her own story with the employees. When they saw that the CEO herself cared enough to attend, they listened closely and carried her words back to their stations. Her company began to see a change. Customers started writing positive reviews online, sharing how the staff went out of their way to help, how they felt welcomed every time they stopped by. Sales grew, but more importantly, the reputation of her brand grew stronger. Angela knew the road would not always be smooth. There would always be new employees, new challenges, and moments where people forgot the values she built her business on. But she also knew she had planted a seed in her company culture. A seed that said, no matter who you are, respect comes first. At night, as she sat by her window looking out at the city lights, Angela smiled to herself. She thought about that single moment in the gas station, the manager's dismissive tone, the silence of the customers, the weight of her own decision. It could have been just another painful memory, but instead, it became a turning point. A reminder that sometimes leadership means standing quietly, speaking firmly, and acting decisively. Angela closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Respect is the true currency." She knew she had lived that lesson once again. Angela woke early on a soft gray morning, the kind that made the city feel quiet and thoughtful. She brewed tea, wrapped her hands around the warm mug, and looked over notes from the training sessions that had just finished across all her stations. The reports made her smile. Managers wrote that customers lingered to chat, employees were greeting people by name, and the thank you count at registers had doubled. But for Angela, numbers were only part of the picture. She wanted to see it, feel it, and know that the change was real. So she decided to visit the first station again, the one where everything began. She dressed simply like before, in a hoodie and jeans, and drove the same old sedan she loved. As she pulled in, she saw small changes she hadn't ordered but appreciated. The windows were clean and bright. A chalkboard by the door read, "We're glad you're here." Underneath it, someone had drawn a smiley face. Angela laughed softly. It was a small touch, but it told her someone on this team understood the heart of her message. Inside, the air felt different. There was music playing softly in the background, not loud, just light and friendly. The shelves were tidy. At the counter stood the same young cashier from that day. Angela remembered how the young woman had remained kind even when the manager wasn't. Today, the cashier wore a name badge that read Lila Shift Lead. Angela felt a warm pride. Someone had promoted her, and that someone was probably the regional manager after the incident. Lila spotted Angela and smiled. "Hi there. Welcome in. Can I help you find anything?" Angela picked up a bottle of water and a granola bar and set them on the counter. "Just these, thank you," she said, her voice gentle. She waited, curious to see what would happen next. Lila scanned the items and asked, "How's your day going so far?" It was a simple question, but it carried care. It's going well, Angela replied. Thanks for asking. How about yours? Busy, but a good kind of busy, Lila said, laughing. Our new training's been helpful. We've been practicing listening more and talking slower. It sounds funny, but it makes people feel calmer. Angela nodded. It does, she said softly. And you're doing it very well. A couple came in with a child who trailed his fingers along the row of colorful drinks. Please don't touch, the mom whispered. Lila leaned forward with a calm smile. He's fine. Can I show him the sticker display? Kids love them. The child's face lit up. The mother relaxed. Angela watched this small moment and felt a quiet peace settle in her heart. This was the kind of station she had dreamed of, human, warm, careful with feelings. When the line cleared, Angela paid. Lila slipped a small coupon into the bag. We're doing a thanks for stopping by thing. It's good for a free coffee next time. Angela accepted it. That's very kind. It's the least we can do, Lila replied. We want people to leave feeling better than when they came in. Angela thanked her and stepped aside, lingering near the door. She noticed a new poster on the wall, Our Promise, Respect First, Always. Beneath it were 5 simple commitments written in plain language: greet everyone, listen with patience, use kind words, help without judgment, and thank people for choosing us. It made Angela's throat tighten. These were her company's values, now living on a wall where anyone could see them. Just then, the assistant manager walked out from the back. He greeted a delivery driver with an easy, "Morning, friend," and took the clipboard with a grateful nod. He saw Angela and gave the same warmth to her. Good to see you. Need anything we can't find on the shelves? No, Angela said. You all have everything I needed today. Outside, Angela stood by her car and just breathed. The sky had opened a little, the gray lifting into a soft blue. She considered going in and revealing herself again, but decided against it. Today wasn't about being the CEO. Today was about watching the promise become real without her name changing the air in the room. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from HR. The former manager had sent an email. He wanted to apologize. Angela read it leaning against the car door, eyes scanning the words. He explained he had thought being strict made him strong. He wrote that he had never imagined the customer he dismissed was the owner, and that the experience had made him rethink what leadership meant. He didn't ask for his job back. He said he just wanted to say he was sorry for how he made people feel, and that he had enrolled himself in a hospitality course at night. Angela closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wind lift the edge of her sleeve. She believed in accountability, and she also believed in learning. She typed a short reply, "Thank you for your message. We hold everyone to a standard of respect. I hope your course helps you build a better path. I wish you well." It was truthful and kind, the balance she tried to keep. She drove to her next stop, the community center. She had sponsored a small event there, a community day with fresh fruit, water bottles, and simple car care tips. On a table near the entrance, staff had laid out flyers with her company's promise. The room was lively. Families sat together, kids colored in booklets about kindness, and a local teacher spoke about the power of greeting people by name. When it was Angela's turn to talk, she kept it short. She told the story without names, without drama, only the lesson: respect is the first thing we give and the last thing we should lose. People nodded. Some clapped softly. A man in a work jacket raised his hand and said, "I stopped at your station last night. The young woman at the register noticed I looked tired and told me to take a minute. That meant a lot." Angela thanked him. She didn't say the young woman's name, but she was sure it was someone like Lila, steady in small ways that make big differences. In the weeks that followed, Angela and her team added a respect bonus to the employee recognition program. Each month, customers could nominate staff who made them feel welcome, and winners would get a bonus and a note from Angela. The first nominations poured in. He helped me carry heavy bags. She noticed I was short on change and told me not to worry. They found my lost keys in the parking lot and waited for me to come back. The notes weren't about big moments. They were about everyday decency, the kind that makes life easier to carry. Angela also created a 7-minute pause practice for all leaders. When something upsetting happened, leaders were encouraged to step aside for 7 minutes, breathe, and choose their words with care. It became a small company ritual, a reminder born from the day she herself chose to sit and think in her car before walking back in. That little pause helped people respond with clarity instead of heat. One evening, the regional manager called Angela to share an update. "We promoted Lila," he said. "She's now assistant manager at the original station. She's training new hires using the customer promise." Angela smiled, imagining the calm way Lila had talked to that mother and child, the way she asked Angela about her day without knowing who she was. "Good," Angela said. "Make sure she knows she's seen." The next morning, Angela wrote a handwritten note and had it delivered to Lila with a gift card. "Thank you for choosing kindness, even when no one was watching." On a quiet Sunday, Angela returned to the first station again. She went inside, this time ready to reveal herself. The team greeted her like any other customer, with patience and warmth. When the line cleared, she said gently to Lila, "Could I speak with the manager?" Lila's eyes widened, and the assistant manager came forward with a friendly, "How can I help?" Angela smiled. "I'm Angela Moore." There was a heartbeat of silence, then a spark of recognition. Lila's hand flew to her mouth. The assistant manager straightened, eyes bright but steady. "Miss Moore," he said, "it's an honor. Thank you for visiting us." Angela kept it simple. "I came to say thank you. I've noticed the changes. The store feels different. You've made this a place where people can breathe." Lila found her voice. "We learned a lot," she said softly. "And we're still learning." "Good," Angela replied. "That's all I've ever wanted, for us to keep learning." She didn't give a long speech. She didn't talk about the past. She just thanked them for living the promise and asked what they needed to do it even better. They asked for small things: another cart for stocking shelves, a bike rack outside, a small fund for kids' sticker packs near the counter. Angela approved them on the spot. They were simple requests with a big heart. As Angela left, a delivery driver held the door and said, "You run a good place here." Angela smiled. "We try," she said. Then she added, "Thank you for saying so." She stood by her car again and took in the view: people coming and going, a cashier laughing with a regular, a child showing his mother the sticker he picked out with the words "Be kind" on it. The chalkboard now read, "We're glad you came by today." It felt like the whole station was quietly humming with the same message. On the drive home, the sun slid low, painting the city in warm light. Angela thought of her grandmother's saying one more time and whispered it into the soft glow of evening: "Respect is the true currency." She believed it more now than ever. It had guided her as an employee, carried her as an owner, and strengthened her as a leader. It had turned a painful moment into a new standard. It had reminded her that power isn't loud when it's real, it's steady, gentle, and full of care. When she reached home, Angela set her keys down and looked out the window at the lights of the neighborhood. Her company was stronger, not just in sales but in spirit. She knew there would be more challenges ahead: new hires to train, bad days to fix, tired mornings to brighten. But she also knew they had a shared language now, a promise they could hold up like a lantern when days felt dark. She poured a glass of water, took a sip, and smiled at the quiet room. Then she wrote one last note in her planner, the kind of note only she would see: "Keep showing up." Keep choosing respect. Keep making room for everyone who walks through the door. And with that, she closed the book, knowing the story didn't end, it simply grew, one kind moment at a time.